All right, next question up says, on the topic of supplemental movements, what value do you think they provide, and how important do you think they are for an athlete long term? Previously, you mentioned that they're used to train muscles as opposed to assistance work, which trains weak ranges of motion. I'm pretty sure I understand, I'm not sure I understand. Are you saying that the competition lifts and close variants don't train the muscle as much as the supplemental movements? I can see their value for hypertrophy, especially given the rep ranges, but why are they kept in year round and even before meet? Personally, I don't think I've benefited from supplemental movements so far. They just seem to tire me out and make the sessions longer. Okay, so good question, actually. Let's kind of dig into what do I mean by some of these statements, and what are the intentions behind the supplemental movements a bit more. So what I mean by the supplemental movements train the muscles, not movements. It's just a focus. So we select assistance movements based on weak range of motion, and then we select supplemental movements based on our best estimate of what a weak muscle group would be. So for instance, if you have weak quads in the squat, we're going to select a supplemental movement that really targets the quads, so that the quads are a limiting factor more so than anything else, so that we minimize any sort of any things that can be done technically to de-emphasize the quads and things like that. So what you'll see sometimes in it's not to say that like a regular competition back squat doesn't train the quads. I mean, of course it does, but it doesn't train the quads to the same degree that a well-selected supplemental movement will train them. Also, as you mentioned, we changed the rep ranges for the supplemental movements so that it's more of a hypertrophy focus. It meets the intent of what we're trying to accomplish with those supplemental movements, which is grow that muscle a bit, kind of develop some more muscle proteins that we can use. We can have a greater number of actin myosin cross bridges that we can bring to the fight. If you just train the squat, will your quads grow? Yeah, of course. But if you have a quad weakness in the squat, we see certain technical changes when the lift gets heavy, when the RPE goes up. These changes take some of that stress off of the quads, shift it back to the hips and things like that, so that you can complete the movement. By selecting something that's more, slightly more of an isolation movement for your supplemental lift, you reduce that ability to shift the stress somewhere else. So by doing that, it's more of a long-term investment. This is definitely a long-term investment thing. It's not like, oh, well, I added the supplemental lift in and now I squat 900 pounds. That's just not how it works. It's an investment down the line. Now, why we don't remove that when we go to when we get close to a competition, well, that's a strategy decision. I mean, you certainly could do that. I don't think that that's a good idea or necessary. I don't think it's a bad idea to do it. I mean, it's a valid strategy to use. It's just not a strategy that I want to use. It's a strategy that the strategy that we're trying to use is more of a complex strategy rather than a concurrent unidirectional strategy. That's just where I've decided to place you. And to be honest, we've just had a lot of success with it. We've had too much success with it for me to think that there's something inherently wrong with that approach. Let's see. There are some other questions in here. Actually, no. I think I managed to get all the questions. Let me know if this is a satisfactory answer to your question or not. Well, there was one other thing I wanted to say about this. I know a lot of people. It's funny how the pendulum swings in powerlifting or anything. for a long time when I was coming up in powerlifting, most people didn't train the competition lift for most of the year, and then as time would go on, when they would go into a meet cycle, then they would start training the competition lift. Now we have people that's all they train is competition lift all year round, and I don't think that's right either. I wrote an article about specificity and the limits of specificity. If you go to articles.reactivetrainingsystems.com, you can find that article and see some of my arguments against taking specificity too far. Why that matters in the context of your specific question here is that while doing more squats would grow the quads more, you're already squatting. We could do additional high rep sets of squats and get your quads to grow. Sure, we can, but there's a limit to how much you're going to adapt to that single movement pattern. There just is, we want to concentrate your adaptations to the competition lift to the competition setting. And then if we're just trying to grow your quads, let's do something else. Something that's a fresh stimulus that's going to get us a little bit more adaptation. That's some of the logic and reasoning behind it. And of course, that article that I wrote is a lot more lengthy. It's a lot more in depth. So if that's something that you're interested in, I encourage you to check that out. And if this is a discussion you want to continue, then please do. I'm definitely open to have that.